Here I have to jump to another, I think, a peculiar acknowledgement of privilege that this incredibly ecclesiastically centric primary upbringing that I had does lend itself very specific advantages of perspective and context of reference of information. And one of those is that I am extremely sensitive to faith. For a lot of people, that comes in the context of religious trauma, specific ritual, specific liturgy, specific faith constructs. For me, it is when I observe the internal sociocognitive, that meaning I am thinking and I am thinking about how my thinking is being perceived, the sociocognitive engagement with the faith process. When that switch gets flipped, it's like a bell goes off for me. I can spot it across a room, and it is in no way, shape, or form specific to religion as we generally discuss it. I have interacted with people who discuss the advantages of their household cleaning products with the evangelical vigor of a Pentecostal church on Easter Sunday. I have seen people swoon over product bullet points as if they are being moved by the Holy Spirit. The behavior is so incredibly similar. If we look at these interactions, not concerned with the nature of the object that they are directed to, but just look at the thing to which I relate, the thing to which I am intellectually, emotionally, spiritually interacting with. What does the interaction look like? If we focus on that transactional, that relational, that transsubjective aspect, then what we wind up with are things that look very, very similar. This, incidentally, is also why I had quite a bit of difficulty interacting with the New Wave atheist movement in the early aughts, because to my eye and to my sensitivities, what I was interacting with was, for all intents and purposes, a fundamentalist evangelical movement that just didn't like the word God. And frankly, I think history has borne me out on that one. I absolutely affirm what Slavoj Žižek meant when he said that the only true path to atheism is through Christianity, that it is through a deep and intense interrogation of the underpinning structures of meaning within a belief system that we can identify where that belief system has shaped our own ideas. I do not strongly identify as an atheist. I am theologically complicated. But I believe that this model needs to be applied anywhere that we can, anywhere that we have the time, the energy that we can, particularly as persons whose fundamental cognitive processes and preferred information state seeking has been deemed non-preferential, deviant, divergent from. It's everywhere. We get the message everywhere. Great example. Phonemes erode based on commonality of use in order to greatly facilitate rapid conveyance of information as it is most frequently conveyed. The more a word is used in a given language, and the more frequently that word is used in conjunction with other words of similar phoneme shape and structure, the more those phonemes tend to degrade. We become less particular in enunciating plosives. Words become shorter. A language evolves over time based on how it gets used most frequently, which is one of the reasons why discussions like this tend to be very difficult for a lot of people. The language does not suit this sort of discussion because this sort of discussion doesn't happen often enough to demand that the language conform to it. The isness of the phoneme structure of language and deterioration of phonemes based on commonality of use infers and implies, and to some degree psychologically and certainly sociologically imposes, a sense of oughtness, that because our language has not evolved specifically to facilitate discussions such as these are discussions that we ought not have, or at the very least that we need to be very careful about having them because we need to pre-screen our company. We need to pre-screen the sociological context because we cannot assume that this is a discussion that can be had or could be welcomed. The structure of the language itself informs that perspective on our part, and we have to actively, consciously resist in order to feel at liberty to say what is actually on our minds. This is a component of cultivating an unconquered sense of self. In many ways, by virtue of our heterogeneous relationship to the society around us, to the underpinning epistemology and overarching meta narrative of that society around us, the values espoused by that society, and particularly the valuation of individuality versus collectivism and the desirable bounds drawn thereby. By virtue of our heterogeneous relationship to all of these things, we are, in many ways, captives of a society that suits not us. And in order to cultivate a whole and integrated sense of self, and in order to create community and space, we have to push that back. We have to consciously, internally, as well as in our interactions with each other and our interactions with the world at large, we have to engage in an ongoing campaign of resistance.